Gardi, Martin Poirier.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go in just a minute. So I'm going to ask everybody to just kind of break it down a little bit. If you have a cell phone and you're just joining us, please make sure your cell phone is either off or on vibrate. Please turn it down.
Please take your conversations outside. Good evening and welcome to our 2022 Sault Ste. Ward 5 Forum. Tonight's forum is being held in the Council Chambers at the Ronald A. Irwin Civic Centre. My name is Rory Ring and I am the CEO of the Sault Ste. Chamber of Commerce, and I'll be acting as the MC for tonight's forum. First of all, we wish to acknowledge that we are holding this meeting on the traditional, territorial, ancestral lands of the Ojibwe people of the Garden River and Batchewana First Nations, as well as the Métis people. The Oshinovic people, this sacred and spiritual place, has been known since time immemorial as Bawating. We wish to honor the original people on this part of Turtle Island as we recognize their homelands in the spirit of partnership and reconciliation. As part of their ongoing commitment to our local community, Algoma University, the Sault Ste. Chamber of Commerce, and SooToday have partnered to present tonight's event. I would now like to call on our moderator, Dr. Trevor Cheer, Associate Professor of Political Science and Chair of the Department of Law and Politics at Algoma University.
Thank you. And before we begin, I would like to remind everyone here in person that if you haven't already done so, please either turn off your phone or put your phone ringers or notifications on silent. I would like to run through the format for tonight's forum. All candidates on the ballot for the October 24th election were invited to take part tonight. Seating and question order for the candidates was decided by a random draw prior to tonight's broadcast. Similarly, questions and their order were decided before tonight's broadcast and prior to the candidates' draw, so the first respondent to each question will be based on luck of the draw. Questions will be posed tonight by students currently enrolled in political science and law and justice programs at Algoma University. Thanks very much to Rajwant Kaur, Karina Conini, Colton Oliverio, and Anna Reich. Once a question has been posed, each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond. After those 90 seconds, their microphones will be turned off. With each new question, a different candidate will respond first. I'd like to remind all candidates of a few ground rules. Profanity and interrupting candidates who have the mic will not be tolerated, and at any point I may request a candidate to stay on topic. At the end of the 7 questions, the question period, each candidate will have 2 minutes to provide closing remarks in which we invite you to speak about your leadership style and how you will help good governance on City Council. We would like to thank and welcome the candidates who are joining us for this evening's Ward 5 Forum. Gideon Down, Corey Gardi, Matthew Scott, and Martin Poirier. At this point, I'd like to invite Rajwant Kaur to ask the first question of our Ward 5 candidates.
Hi. So my first question is, what will you do to improve Sault Ste. Mary's economy, create more jobs and opportunities, and make this city an attractive place to do business? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll begin with Gideon Down.
Thank you. The Soo is right now seems to be pretty much a single industry. There are a couple other major players, but unfortunately that industry is heavy industry. And myself, I would like to see us branch out into more of a manufacturing base if that was possible. Myself, I'd like to do as much as possible to see us get that way, especially in regards to environmental impacts that heavy industry tends to have on the surrounding areas. Myself, I'd like to see good paying jobs in something like a modular home facility, manufacturing plant, possibly in regards to our housing crisis and affordable housing, as well as branching out into our southern neighbors. Goldman Sachs has created a large facility in Europe and obviously see the benefit of that. So that's something that I would like to see here. And not only would it provide jobs, it would also economically and environmentally, modular housing is a more efficient way of doing housing. So that's something I would like to see come to Sault Ste. Marie, and hopefully would provide the means that and the jobs and the quality of jobs that people are looking for.
Thank you. Next is Corey Gardi.
Thank you. I believe there are 4 paths forward on economic development. First, working to attract businesses that complement our largest private sector employers, Algoma Steel and Tenaris. Secondly, we need to attract knowledge-based businesses to the Soo. One of our most successful is Village Media. Started in the Soo, now a media company with presence across the globe. We need to work with our post-secondary institutions as well to ensure innovative programming that addresses the need of our local labor market while meeting the demands of a knowledge-based economy. The Sault Ste. Marie Innovation Centre has a role to play, and I believe there's much more that the center can offer by way of both diversifying and further specializing in some of the things they do well. The climate crisis and the challenges it presents to the environment and natural world present opportunities for the economy. This is one of the reasons I initiated the Soo's effort to secure the soon-to-be-established Canada Water Agency. It could bring millions of dollars to the economy annually and make us a world leader in the science, research, and preservation and governance of fresh water. We need to capitalize on being part of the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Seaway System. To me, it presents a huge unlock for our community. The economy of the states, provinces, and cities that surround the Great Lakes represents one of the biggest economies of the world, of which I don't think we have capitalized on to the degree that we should have, and I think that's a path we should pursue. Thanks to SooToday, Algoma University, and the Chamber, and the students for tonight.
Thank you. Next is Matthew Scott.
Thank you. I'm going to quickly thank everyone for having us, not use too much time. So the question was around the economy, boosting the economy, supporting job growth, increasing jobs. I like to pride myself on the last 4 years believing that every decision that I've made was in support of increasing jobs in Sault Ste. Marie. It was a promise I made 4 years ago, and it's a promise that I'll make this year as well. I will always fight to support small businesses. Anything that comes across council's table, I always approach with a holistic view of how we can use this or how it could benefit the city of Sault Ste. Marie. One thing that we could do that I think we should improve on is the mixture of our taxes. Right now our large industrial taxes are rather high. I think that we can mix that up. It is within the city's ability to do, and that would allow more drawing power for Sault Ste. Marie to bring in some of those larger industrial businesses. One thing that we saw over this past 4 years was the Tenaris announcement that brought all of their production to Sault Ste. Marie from Calgary. I actually spoke very closely and worked closely with the provincial government during that time and our MPP Ross Romano, and I will continue to fight with other levels of government to ensure that we have job growth and economic growth in Sault Ste. Marie. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Martin Poirier.
Thank you. I agree with Matthew Scott. Our main lever of action is taxation. We are limited in what we can do, and sometimes less is more. We have to remember that 20% of the price of rent is city taxes. So the higher the taxes, the higher the rents, and the less attractive we are for newcomers and developers. And I'm personally, I put a lot of trust in people in their survival skills. People will find a way to make a living. So I trust this a lot more than putting money in economic development, for which I would like to see studies to demonstrate if those funds are really working. I'd rather see rents go down, people come in, and I think that could create more jobs.
Thank you. I'd like to invite Karina Konini to ask our second question.
Hello. What will you do to ensure reasonable minimum standard of living for people in Sault Ste. Marie, including income security, access to affordable quality housing, and food security?
Thank you. We begin with Corey Gardi.
Thank you. There are a few things we can do. We can work closely and support efforts of organizations like Harvest Algoma. I personally believe there's a lot of potential in developing both agri-food and agriculture locally that would enhance our local food security. With inflation on the rise, things have become considerably more expensive for everyone, and its impacts are felt most drastically by low-income earners and seniors. Much of what can be done to quell this falls under the responsibility of the feds and the province. Municipally, we can review our user fees, permits, licenses, and fines to consider if any need to be adjusted to reflect changes in demand. There may be opportunity to reduce the cost of certain things. We need to spend responsibly as a city and broaden our tax base to spread it out over more households. We need to lobby the feds and the province so we get our share of affordable housing that they both propose. We should fully support efforts of the DSAB, which I have vice-chaired, to help them build out more affordable housing options. And we need to work with urban Indigenous organizations, as more than 60% of our homeless population self-identifies as Indigenous. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Matthew Scott.
Thank you. Similar to actually what Councillor Gardi was saying, the first thing that came to mind is supporting organizations such as Harvest Algoma. I know that they do fantastic work and they have a very high concern for food scarcity in the city, and every bit of work that they've done so far has been just fantastic, and working closely with them and groups like them is paramount to reducing food scarcity in Sault Ste. Marie. As for the housing, over the past 4 years, I have supported basically, I think, every development project that had come forward to council that would increase housing. I think that that's a very important part, not to take from Councillor Gardi again, but I think reviewing our user fees and permits is a good opportunity there to encourage more development. I think it's a barrier of entry that maybe is preventing as much growth as we could potentially be having. Leaning on the province and the federal government is also an opportunity there, since it is in their interest to increase housing across the community, actually across the country and the province, but we could definitely leverage our abilities with our MP and our MPP to see some more funding here. And I think there was a third part to your question, and I'm missing that. Would you be able to?
In regards to food security?
Yes, okay. So I don't know if I'm gonna have enough time. No, I don't think I'll have enough time for that one. I apologize. I will get back to you after, though.
Thank you. Next is Martin Poirier.
Yes, for income security and income redistribution, I don't think we are the good place to do that, because we basically tax assets, and sometimes we could tax people that are already poor and put them into more poverty. This is really something for income tax to do. But where we can have an impact is on social housing. I think next council should appoint councillors that are a lot more proactive in using all the money that's in the social service budget. In the last 2 years, we did surpluses of more than 4 million in community housing and development. Out of revenues of 23 million, we missed the mark big time. And it's okay to make a huge surplus when you're in the private sector, but when it's money for the people that really need it, it's not. I find it's not okay. We're sitting on a pile of cash. Net of liabilities, we have 14 million in our bank account in social services. Some of it's good to have reserves, but the rest we could really take that money, leverage it, build more, rent, renovate, repair. But we can really do something with that. And once we do that, it will be a lot easier to go to the provincial government to ask for more money, because when you have full money in your pocket, it's kind of not credible.
Thank you. Next is Gideon Down.
Thanks. I know a lot of the people in Ward 5 that I've talked to have spoke to taxes in regards even to their living standard. You have quite a few retirees who, again, are on fixed incomes, and some of them, they haven't even had a cost of living adjustment since 2000. And a lot of these things are playing into them deciding to move out of their homes and go to some of the seniors' homes because they just can't afford to live where they've lived for the last 30 or 40 years, which is unfortunate. And I think this council should do and can do a better job, and that's what I hope to do. In regards to housing security, again, if we're able to not overpopulate some of the seniors' homes and keep some of these people in their homes where they want to be, for a longer period of time. I think that's going to help the overall situation of housing in Sault Ste. Marie. Also, I'd like to see development, having grown up in a farming in a rural community. I don't think some of the rural areas of Sault Ste. Marie are being utilized as well as they could for farm production, food production. It'd be awesome to see some of that instead of coming from California being developed here in our own city. And I would hope and think we could work with some of the nonprofit organizations to be able to provide them with some of the funding they need, as opposed to looking to government programs. They just need the money to provide the food for.
Thank you. I'll now invite Colton Oliverio to ask our third question.
Hello there. So to get around the city, cars, buses, trucks, bicycles, all forms of transportation really need good roads. So what are your planning priorities for the city's roadways? Furthermore, how are you going to improve public transit?
Thank you. We begin with Matthew Scott.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Roads are actually something that I've been harping on recently as a current councillor. I would have preferred to see more money directed toward roads than other projects that we're pushing forward with. I think that our main infrastructure being roads is something that we direly need to take care of. We've all driven, ridden, walked on them, and some roads are not in the best shape, when that's putting it politely. So absolutely one thing that I would like to see is perhaps halting some of major projects and putting more taxpayer money toward roads rather than a drastic increase in taxes. I do think that we are going to see some tax increases over the next 4 years, and they might be a little bit hard to swallow, but as long as the majority of those increases are going toward our infrastructure that we have and maintaining and repairing that, I would potentially be in support. As for public transit, that is something that I'm hoping to tackle in the next 4 years as well. I think we need to review our current transit routes. They end at seemingly random spots. As far as Ward 5 goes, you can't get onto a bus any further west than Nixon Road. And that's, for me, for example, I would have to walk to a bus stop. And I know that I've had many residents recently reach out regarding Parabus service, which follows the actual same transit routes. And so they would have to somehow get to Nixon Road to get onto a Parabus, which isn't always possible. So definitely a transit committee is probably my resolution.
Thank you. Next is Martin Poirier.
I would propose that we charge development fees when there's a new development. This is something that's done throughout Ontario. We are one of the only city not doing it. So basically, those funds are there for maintenance and improving our infrastructure. So basically, what I'm saying is we should increase our revenue stream by charging developers money when they do new stuff, and that will be used to increase the budget for maintenance or creating new infrastructure. We still have in Ward 5 gravel roads. As for public transit, I think we did some good things in the past, but our budgets are quite limited, and we don't have the population density to really increase it, because otherwise we'll not be able to support it. But for transportation, I think in active transportation, we should allow e-bikes on the hub trail. One of the most frequent reasons I hear for people not using bicycles to go to work is they say, I don't want to sweat, I don't want to arrive all sweaty, like at the job. If you use electricity to go, then you can sweat your way back home, and it's probably gonna pay itself, like depending where you live, but it's a sound investment for most.
Thank you. Next is Gideon Down.
Thank you. I'd like to see what we already have maintained. I know a lot of people would like to see the hub trail expanded, but having walked out there with my kids, and even the roads, there's a lot of things that just need to get redone, and at least for I'd say the next 4 years, getting everything back up to the level where it can be maintained instead of replaced. I know a lot of people like to replace instead of maintain, but the overall cost of doing that, the project overruns and everything else that go along with that are something that I don't think we can afford to have in the Soo. I'd like to also see, in regards to transportation improvements, tracking for contractors when they do roads, what the maintenance records are for those roads, if they're finished on time, on budget, and what we need to do later to try to fix something that was done to a substandard level should be all documented so we can start to trust the contractors who are getting the bids as opposed to just going with the cheapest one to try to get something done. And I do agree that the hub trail with an electric bike access would be awesome for the Sioux and would probably increase the amount of people using it if that was an option for them. So I think that's a good idea.
Thank you. Next is Corey Gardi.
Thanks. We have our bus terminal, which needs to be modernized. Personally, as long as it's in the proximity of downtown, I will support the best option at a reasonable cost. We need to further optimize transit in the West End and expand its service, especially west. I want to expand Parabus service at a more reasonable cost to areas farther north and west in our community. I'd support the use of smaller buses for the routes that aren't that busy, though moving forward, further on-demand service may be the way to address this. I think we need to be careful, though, with more and more people moving to the Sioux, including students. I see many of our routes getting busier, and we must be prepared for that. We also need to transition to the most efficient and climate-friendly buses we can as soon as it's feasible to do that. And we have a plan for our roads. We spend more per capita than neighboring municipalities. We have a plan moving forward, and I've encouraged city staff to communicate this plan regularly to keep the public up to date. I'm also in favor of more complete streets for all means of transportation. We've expanded non-motorized opportunities in the West with some bike lanes. I've been an advocate, along with Councillor Scott, to expanding the hub trail west. I'm committed to doing that. I know what Councillor Scott is as well, and I'm looking forward to working on that should I be reelected.
Thank you. I'd now like to invite Rajwant Kaur to ask the fourth question of our Ward 5 candidates.
My question is, what will you do to help to protect the Sault Ste. Mary's natural environment and enhance its recreational opportunities? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
We
you for that
begin
question.
with Martin Poirier.
Thank you. I would propose a pesticide ban, use and sale with sectorial exemption. That's to protect biodiversity. When I'm saying sectorial exemption, it's needed in agriculture, forestry, industrial lands, even for health, in daycares. We should do a moratorium on splitting big rural lands to create 2 small 2-acre lots. Because once you split them, it's very hard to do agriculture, and once it's splitted and you build one house on a 2-acre land, that land is kind of stuck for a long time with just one house on 2 acre. So either we densify, and this I would propose we densify all zones, like no more height restrictions, so that we don't expand on our natural environment, that we don't become just like an eternal suburb of the spotless grass. How we could more enjoy our environment, I think we should make a beach at Bellevue Park. If you go around Topsail Island, there's already natural beaches there. People could just enjoy it without taking a bus to Pointe des Chênes or taking their car. They would just walk or take a bike there. It would be a beautiful spot. I'm not exactly sure why it's not done already.
Thank you. Next is Gideon Down.
Thank you. The environment definitely needs to be protected. And again, unfortunately, for Sault Ste. Marie, the heavy industry that's here isn't helping in that regard. And I know there's been a lot of talk about Louise Drive and development out in that area. I do think that a lot of these areas, there's a reason why people have built and want to develop. I believe that the Conservation Authority is being utilized here in Sault Ste. Marie to save and protect those, and I'm in full support of those. I do believe that there's definitely an option or an ability to increase the recreation. The opening back up of Pointe des Chênes, I know that was brought up by a couple of constituents. I would like to have an open and honest discussion and conversation about what tests and studies were done in regards to some of the conclusions that were drawn on that. And if at least feasible to do so, even if there's an engineering requirement, get that park and area back opened up. There's a lot of waterfront here in Sault Ste. Marie, being right in the middle of the Great Lakes, and a lot of people are enjoying those from their camps, but those who can't afford them would like to be able to have campsites to do it from on the weekends, and I'd be in full support of that development.
Thank you. Next is Corey Gardi.
I'm in support of further enhancing our parks, and considering our location, we have an obligation to protect the Great Lakes and its watershed. That is why I initiated the ban of single-use plastics in Sault Ste. Marie. I've asked staff and was supported by City Council for City to develop a citywide plan for electric charging infrastructure, as we have to be prepared for the increased prevalence and use of electric vehicles. I encourage the city and receive the support of council for us to apply to the federal government's $2 billion tree initiative to further green our city. We have to ensure that moving forward, developments, both commercial and residential, are as environmentally friendly as they can be. We need to plan for the electrification of our bus fleet as well. And I've said this before, and I will repeat it here. We can learn a lot about conservation and sustainability by listening to and working with our neighboring communities of Garden River and Batchewana. Thanks.
Thank you. Next is Matthew Scott.
Thank you. I appreciate the question. The environment is actually incredibly important, and it's something that over the last 4 years, I feel that we've taken much more seriously as a council. I wish to continue that work in the next 4 years in a few different ways. One thing in particular that I would like to see, and it's similar to what Councillor Gardi was just mentioning, but taking it one step further, I would like to see all reports from staff to council on any development to include a part that specifically speaks to any environmental and ecological impact that the development would have. And what brought this up is I had a lot of constituents reach out from smaller developments saying, hey, they're taking X, Y, and Z tree down, they're doing this. This is impacting more than just what they think to develop on that land. And I thought that was a really good point because it was something that was never really brought to council. So I think making that an absolute on every report that we get from staff is a right direction to help council be informed and to protect our environment. Not supporting any projects that would be on our waterfront and have the potential to spill into the water. I know that the water in particular out near Pointe de Chêne Park had something go on there, and we're still feeling the effects. So I think really taking the environment first is the best approach, and that's a complete approach. Always think about the environment and then go from there, because we really only have one.
Thank you. I'd like to now invite Anna Reich to ask the next question.
If elected, what will you do to be a strong ally for Indigenous people in Sault Ste. Marie?
Thank you. We'll begin with Gideon Down.
Thank you. As part of my union steward training, I was able to take part in unionism on Turtle Island and got to speak and learn about some of the Indigenous heritage and some of the struggles that they're going through right now. One of the chiefs was speaking towards the lack of jobs for skilled trades and the apprentices that they have. Being a tradesperson myself and knowing what's going to be required here in Sault Ste. Marie and beyond, especially if we're going to electric for our infrastructure and vehicles, I'd love to work with them and find placements for their tradespeople as well as our own. A lot of people are struggling to find placements, whether out of high school or college, and I think that would be a good start. Also, myself, I actually drive and fill up at Gen 7 and on Batchewana there, or Rankin, and I would promote that the city would actually partner with them in regards to fuel supply even for the city. That would work both in taxpayers' benefit as well as the community there. And I think that would be a good start for something that we could take part in right away.
Thank you. Next is Corey Gardi.
Thank you. We need to work closely with organizations like the Indian Friendship Center Personally, last year, to enhance my own cultural sensitivity as it relates to Indigenous people, I took a course through the University of Toronto entitled Aboriginal Worldviews and Education. We have to ensure we work to assist our urban Indigenous homeless population, as a majority of our homeless self-identify as Indigenous. And we have to encourage the community to learn more about our local Indigenous population. And a great way of doing this, in my opinion, is to work with both Algoma University, who has done an excellent job in recent years enhancing the community's cultural awareness, and with also we have to encourage community organizations to work with and explore opportunities that can be fostered through SKG and its beautiful new school and facility on Queen Street East. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Matthew Scott.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I like to believe that throughout my whole life, I've been a learner about education, a learner about, the world, and a learner about culture. My family, when I was growing up, was actually very close with many Indigenous families. My parents spent a lot of time, some of their closest friends were Indigenous, so I was always around different parts of the Indigenous culture. Later in life, I ended up going to Algoma University, and every opportunity that I had there, I would partake in anything that had to do with learning and the Indigenous culture that they often would celebrate at Algoma University. And even recently, as a counselor, when there was a demonstration outside of City Hall, immediately after the council meeting, I went and spoke with the leaders there, and they brought me in and allowed me to sit around the fire, and we had very good discussions. So I think engaging all of our Indigenous partners throughout the community, beyond just the larger ones, even the smaller grassroots ones, is absolute something that we need to do. Encouraging Indigenous small business, encouraging Indigenous tourism, being supportive, making every decision as partners rather than just as something that is thought of like, oh, right, no, we need to be partners. We're equal here, we're equal, we're on their land. I believe it's what we need to share, so thank you.
Thank you. Next is Martin Poirier.
Thank you. I read the Indigenous leaders say that if we reverted back our name to Bawating, it could go a long way towards reconciliation. I believe we should put that to a vote. Like, next ballot, next election, let's ask our population, should we revert back our name to Bawating? I'd be in favor of it. I think it's the right thing to do. But even if it's a no that ends up out of that, we'll probably encourage voters to go to vote. We'll encourage participation, and through those discussions, some other things can pop up. We'll ask our questions. I'm sure the question will go out. What else can we do? Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to now invite Karina Konini to ask the next question.
What will you do to ensure that the administration is implementing continuous improvement techniques and benchmarking of best-in-class municipal practices to ensure accountability to the taxpayer and demonstrate return on taxpayer investments?
Thank you. We'll begin with Corey Gardi.
Thank you. First and foremost, accountability begins and ends with council members. I have and will continue to ensure that the public is aware of my perspective and opinions on issues by speaking at city council meetings and other public meetings and by way of social media. I make it a point to reply to every email and phone call I receive and visit residents when necessary. I'm in favor of releasing our city council agenda earlier. I'm also in favor of adding a council member or two to the agenda review committee for city council meetings. I believe we should develop a program that formally provides for employees to bring forward efficiency ideas. We have undertaken a municipal services review, and I will support these types of efforts moving forward. And we have to ensure that we do not have duplication of service. We have seen the benefit of this through our realignment of the Economic Development Corporation and rolling it into our Community Development Department. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Matthew Scott.
Thank you. I fret to sound like a parrot over here, but Councillor Gardi brought up a lot of points that I have for that as well. Continuously improvement through just an efficiency in City Hall of not doing duplication of work, duplication of areas. Accountability is more where I was hoping to lean on in here. So accountability is a very important one. Having the Agenda Review Committee include, I would think, at least 2 councillors, and I appreciate why it was changed this term, but I do think that that allows for a little more transparency and accountability to constituents and residents. In addition to that, I also agree that we should have the agenda out earlier. One of the major complaints that I got this term was people getting the public agenda on a Friday for a council meeting on a Monday and having their thoughts that they can't really get out in 3 days, especially over a weekend. I think that that goes a long way, having the residents have the ability to feel like they actually have a say beyond calling in a panic and telling you, hey, I just heard Friday that this is going on. What's the deal? I think that those are very important key aspects that we're lacking currently, and hopefully if I get in for the next 4-year term, that those would be things that we'd be able to change.
Thank you. Next is Martin Poirier.
Thank you. I will also lean on accountability more than continuous improvement, as continuous improvement is more something on the day-to-day on the administration side. As for accountability, I believe we should have more transparency. We should ask the entities in which we invest to publish their financial statements. I searched, I was unable to find the financial statements for Economic Development Corporation, Sault Ste. Marie Innovation Center. We need to be able to follow the money, know how our money is used. Also on accountability, I believe we should use a lot more surveys to know our customers' satisfaction. For example, you close a building permit, we send you a survey. Were the inspectors consistent in their inspection, yes or no? From those surveys, we can find where there are issues, and then we can challenge our administration on that. And we can follow it through time. Is it improving or not? We could create some kind of dashboard. Okay, there's that level of satisfaction. And is it improving or not? If not, well, we'll discuss, we'll find solutions.
Thank you. Next is Gideon Down.
Thank you. I think in regards to ensuring continuous improvements, that's something I referred to earlier. Setting up a system where we can track road maintenance, construction for infrastructure buildings, where we can keep the contractors who have obtained those bids and done the projects accountable. If something comes up later, if something wasn't planned for, if something needed to be repaired after the project was completed, that all needs to be documented, and that's going to help minimize what the taxpayers are going to have to put into it. Also, myself, I personally plan to being fully accountable to anyone in my ward who would vote for me. There's no reason why we can't have feedback, whether it's from, like Martin said, from the building department or even myself. If I'm not representing someone properly, they have to have an avenue for them to be able to tell me. More than just an email. I'd like to implement something like a Mentimeter where you can have that feedback prior to council, especially if there's a short time frame where they can make sure that and see the actual results from other people in the ward that we can then apply to the decisions we're making here at council. And I think that's important to have that feedback from the constituents. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now invite Colton Oliverio to ask our final question.
My final question to you all would be, what would you do to help improve public health and safety in Sault Ste. Marie?
Thank you. We begin with Matthew Scott.
Thank you for the question. That's actually a very good question that the community as a whole, I'm sure, is asking. Over the past 4 years, I have served as the City Council representative on the Algoma Public Health Board. That's something that I take pride in because I'm right there at the forefront of decision-making when it comes to public health from their point of view. Other aspects that we all know are occurring in our community would be the mental health and addictions concerns. That's one thing that I can tell you confidently that I have lobbied directly to the MPP for the past, I feel like, 2 to 3 years, asking him, you know, when are we getting funding for withdrawal management, which did end up coming through for operational funding, but not quite to the level that we would hope. So continuing to lobby higher levels of government and working with the ground level groups, I think, are two absolute musts for the city council to help this. Being out there, talking to the people who are at the forefront, our emergency responders, talking with them, figuring out the roots of problems. Each person will have a different story, so we can't just stamp one solution for everyone. But I think working together with all of the community partners and the different levels of government is the right approach.
Thank you. Next is Martin Poirier.
Much of public health is, as said before, under provincial or even federal jurisdiction. As for safety, I think we should increase the budgets. We cannot run police or fire departments on minimal staff. I think it's short-sighted. It will work. You'll save some money in the short run, but you'll have people that are sick or something like that, and then like you're putting too much pressure on those people. You need some buffer. As for public safety, addictions is one of the things I've heard most during the campaign. We can use more the funds we have in social services, but at the end, I think we should pressure our current federal government to take its logic for legalizing drugs to its limit. We've started with marijuana, but if you look at cocaine, one of the main reasons people overdose, cocaine gets cut with fentanyl. If you had legal drugs, well, you wouldn't have those tinted drugs. You wouldn't have the same problems, and we wouldn't be funding like criminal gangs and violence down to South America.
Thank you. Next is Gideon Down.
Thank you. I believe that there are quite a few organizations that are already operating here in Sault Ste. Marie on a nonprofit basis. And as opposed to, again, reinventing the wheel, funding some large infrastructure, and then on top of that, trying to find operating costs, I think we could do a better job of partnering with some of them that are already accomplishing some of the goals, but on a much smaller scale than what a lot of people would like to see for this area. Also, I'd like to, if put in, be a part of that myself. I'd love to be on a commission that would help to facilitate that discussion. There's a lot of work to be done here in regards to the addictions as well as the homeless, and I think developing that there's some buildings that again, if refurbished, could be used to help, especially the coming winter months. I know some of the places that people have gone to, bank ATM kiosks, etc. The businesses have straight up shut them down. They're no longer accessible throughout the nights, and again, coming into wintertime, there's going to be a lot of needs for those people here in Sault Ste. Marie. So I think it's something that we do need to get a hold on and start operating on quickly, on the short term at least.
Thank you. Next is Corey Gardi.
It's my opinion, and I've been vocal about the province and the federal government's need to support the Sioux and Northern Ontario more when it comes to our addiction and mental health crisis. We have not received the support anywhere close to what we need. I'm in favor of supervised consumption sites. As mentioned, we need support. We need to support and invest in supportive housing. Our community paramedicine program that is being initiated will help bring care to those who need it where and when they need it. We need to continue to work closely with the DSAB to develop innovative efforts such as this one. We have to work closely with our healthcare partners so we can ensure our healthcare system has the resources to meet the demands it faces. The Sault Ste. Marie Police Service has been very responsive when I have requested their assistance to address concerns of residents, and I appreciate that very much. I know there's discussion of a new police headquarters. I appreciate the state of our current headquarters and that the condition it's in, and that improvement must be made. I know there's this idea to build a new one. Some think downtown, but the public must be aware that it will cost tens upon tens of millions of dollars, and I doubt we will get any assistance from the province. It will most likely be funded solely on the backs of local taxpayers. I'd be in favor of the most cost-effective plan, which would address the needs of our force. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, we invite closing remarks from our Ward 5 candidates, and we encourage each candidate to speak a little bit about their leadership style and how they would ensure good governance on City Council. You each have 2 minutes, and we begin with Martin Poirier.
Thank you. I ran for council mainly to bring in ideas and to steer the debate towards an important reality, that is our city's population is declining. So even if we keep our taxes at the same level, our burden has increased. That needs to be discussed. I'm one to believe that we should decrease our expenses, and I think we should do it in economic development, because this is the only expense that I see that is unnecessary. Why it's important to recognize that. It's the previous council, what I saw is the last decisions they did is increasing our expenses when our population is decreasing. So our burden will increase in the short term, unfortunately. I want to be part of a team on council. I'm a very curious person, and I like to challenge and question what I see before my eyes. I don't easily fall into groupthink. That's why I think I can be a good asset on council. I want to conclude by thanking everyone that has organized this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Gideon Down.
Thank you. I'd also like to thank the organizers of this event. I appreciate the time and effort it takes to put it on. Myself, I'm not really one to tend to delve into politics. I'm one of the working class. I work at Algoma Steel, electrician at the blast furnace. I don't tend to like the terms government in regards to people. I think the people in a democratic society need to have their voices heard, and that's the reason why I'm running this year. My sister had asked me what I was going to do about some of the concerns I had, and so that's where I'm at. So I think the people need to have someone that they can, an option to vote for that will represent them. I'm 17-year living out in Ward 5. I'm very much a grassroots person. I would love to see an increase in tax base and revenue, but I don't want to see it at the expenses of the people who are already paying very dearly in some cases. They're, someone who works in the trade who's built their own home from scratch, who now can't afford taxes and are looking at moving into seniors' retirement home. I don't think that that's something that we need for the city, and if elected on October 24th, I would do my best to work in that regard and prevent that from happening. I think the last election in 2018, there was roughly a 35% turnout in voting, and unfortunately, I think that's what we're lacking here. We need some input from the ward and the members of the municipality, and as council, then we need to take those ideas and put them into motion. So that's what I plan to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Corey Gardi.
Thank you. I've worked hard to develop a strong, respectful working relationship with fellow councillors and city staff, which I believe has benefited the residents of Ward 5. I've been able to build consensus with fellow councillors over the course of my term for items and initiatives that have benefited Ward 5 in the West End. A couple of examples of this are the resurfacing of Allen Side Road and the soon-to-be-established splash pad in the park at Manzo Pool. I pride myself on working hard to settle residents' concerns as best I can. I return emails, phone calls, and take time to visit with constituents when necessary. Over the course of this campaign, I have knocked on over 2,000 doors so far and attended a few meetings organized by neighbors and spoken to many people about the challenges and opportunities of our community. Despite our respective opinions and perspectives, these discussions have always been respectful, which has been very much appreciated. I fully recognize the importance of working with community partners and neighboring communities. An example of this is the work I have done to spearhead our efforts to be home to the Canada Water Agency, along with my efforts as part of that agency task force. Through this effort, we have rallied community and regional partners, which has grown into a true joint venture amongst neighboring communities, local and regional organizations and agencies, and our post-secondary schools. I am proud of our efforts and confident in our chances. I've been a strong voice, a responsible and reliable voice for Ward 5 over the last 4 years, and I will continue to fiercely represent the West End and Ward 5 if re-elected. I ask for your support and your vote on October 24th. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Matthew Scott.
Thank you. Thank you to the Chamber of Commerce and Algoma University, as well as SooToday, for organizing the event. I'd like to start out by saying that as a 34-year resident of Ward 5, I know what people are thinking, and I know what people are feeling in the West End. One of the common themes that I've gathered from the doors this particular election cycle was most people in Ward 5 feel that the taxation has outpaced the services. We're being taxed higher and higher, and it feels like the West End of the city is being forgotten. That's something that I take to heart. My family is from the West End. I've only ever lived in Ward 5, formerly Ward 6. And so that's something that I want to change. Over the past 4 years, I feel like I've made great strides toward that change. And over the next 4, I believe I can continue those strides. As far as my leadership style, I bring a level-headed decision-making type of approach to most problems. I look at the data first. I don't act on emotions or feelings. Sometimes things aren't as they appear, and it's important to understand why they're being presented as so. I like to think that I'm open and approachable. The other councillors and I all have good working relationships, whether or not we agree on particular issues or whether or not we vote in line. At the end of the day, we can still work together to get things done as a community. I also have a good working relationship with the provincial and federal members of Parliament, and I do think that that's important as a councillor, being able to lobby for needs at higher levels of government. So teamwork and data-driven decision-making are 2 of my main aspects for leadership, and I think that on October 24th will hopefully resonate with the residents of Ward 5. Thank you.
Thank you.
On behalf of Algoma University, the Sault Ste. Marie Chamber of Commerce, and SooToday, I would like to thank our candidates for taking part in this forum today. We wish each of you the very best in the remaining campaign period. I would like to thank the partners who presented this evening's forum, SooToday for helping to organize the forum, collecting the questions from the public, and streaming tonight's online event. Algoma University and the Sault Ste. Marie Chamber of Commerce for hosting the forum, and the students of Algoma University's Political Science, Law, and Justice courses for asking the questions tonight, and to our mic monitor, Alfredo Natividad from PQA. The Sault Ste. Marie Chamber of Commerce would like to extend thanks as well to North Star Consulting for its ongoing support of the Chamber of Commerce and for its sponsorship of tonight's events. Thank you to the staff of the Ronald A. Irwin Civic Centre for their help in preparing for tonight's forum as well. Finally, we would like to thank you, everyone here, and also at home for joining us. We hope that this discussion has helped better inform you about each of the candidates and their respective platforms, and we encourage all eligible voters to exercise their democratic right on October 24th and have their voices heard in Sault Ste. Marie municipal election. As we conclude tonight, I just remind folks that at 8 p.m. this evening, we will be following up with our mayoral forum, and we hope that you remain or tune in to that next hour. Thank you very much, everybody. We greatly appreciate your attendance and your viewership. Good night.